This is a midterm review of terms and definitions. Computer hardware versus computer software. Computer hardware is a solid object that actually is part of the mechanical things that run the computer. The software is only virtual. It's only the pieces of data. It's not anything that you can pick up. So if you can pick up and throw it, it's hardware. But if you can think about it, it's software. A graphical user interface, or GUI, is an operating system that uses picture icons to symbolize computer programs and commands. So when you can click on a picture to make something happen, you're using a GUI. Vector graphics, mathematical formulas, are used to describe the shapes in the file. The fonts will be scaled without losing definition and appear the same at any resolution. So the font on the left, the A and then the large A, those are vector. But the font on the right, when you scale it up, becomes very fuzzy. It is bitmapped. The computer anti-aliases the edges, so the edges have fuzziness around them. The anti-aliasing helps it look smoother, even though it has jagged edges, until you make it big enough to see the anti-aliasing. So a raster graphics image is composed of individual pixels on a two-dimensional grid, kind of like a map. Scaled fonts will appear jagged and fuzzy. A bit is a binary digit. This is the smallest unit of computer memory and is a stored electrical charge. It can be expressed as 0 or 1, on or off. This is just a state change. That is the only thing that it is, and therefore it has only two states. That's why it's binary. Binary means 2. A byte is a group of 8 bits expressed as a series of ones and zeros. For example, 011, 01, 001. The order of the ones and zeros determines the meaning. An aspect ratio is the proportion of width to height. So 4:3, which is your old-time television screen, or 16:9, which is a modern television screen. You divide the width by the height. You have to use the same unit, so if you're using inches for the width, you have to use inches for the height. If you're using millimeters for the width, you have to use millimeters for the height. Once you divide, the units drop out. A pixel is a picture element. It's one dot of light on the screen. The raster map is a grid filled with pixel dots making up the picture. Remember, raster graphics, it's like a map. So a raster map is that grid that is describing the image as the different discrete pixels making up the picture. RAM is random access memory. It's temporary. It disappears when the power is turned off. It is completely electronic with no moving parts. Your clipboard is an area of RAM which is used for temporary storage of text and graphics. The cut, copy, and paste commands use the clipboard. It's in RAM. It's only temporary. So if you do use cut and paste to do something, if you turn off the computer and turn it back on, it won't be on the clipboard anymore. You won't be able to paste it. So once you cut it or copy it, you have to make sure that you don't have an interruption in power. Some programs will ask you if there's a large amount of memory being used by something on the clipboard, if you want to keep it there or if you want to get rid of it, because it does fill up. So make sure you know what you have going in your RAM. It can interfere with the way the different programs work if it's too full. Your hard drive is secondary or permanent memory. It stores data in a sealed unit. It does not require continuous power. This is why you can turn off the computer and carry it around and move it somewhere else and put it back down and then plug it back in, and you still have programs saved because they're on the hard drive. And it's a permanent memory source. It does not have to have power to keep that memory going. Removable media also is permanent memory. So your flash drive will hold on to something and it won't disappear as soon as it runs out of power. As soon as you unplug it, it doesn't go flat. It doesn't completely disappear and become blank. Permanent memory devices, the information remains when the power is off. Compression is something you do to reduce the size of your file by keeping track of the information but not saving each pixel or bit of information separately. So lossy compression combines colors that are near in hue and shade. It slightly changes the appearance of the file. Lossless compression is more accurate and does not change the appearance of the file. It uses more disk space than lossy compression. JPEG is a type of lossy compression that you use for image files. Animation terms and definitions. The persistence of vision. Your eye sees images in sequence changing quickly and the images persist, that means remain and stay, on the retina, that's the part of your eye that sees pictures and puts them into your brain, until it's replaced by the next image. So when you see something, the picture stays there and your eye interprets it before it goes ahead and replaces it with the next image. The images will blend together and are interpreted by the brain as smooth motion. This concept is the basis for movies, video, and animation. A frame is a single image that is part of a scene, one image on screen at a moment in time. A keyframe is a frame showing an important change in position or appearance, used as a guide for subsequent action, used in storyboards to tell the story, showing the beginning or end of a move. A keyframe is also the term that is used by most computer programs that do animation to designate a place or a spot on the timeline that holds information about position, size, rotation, or all types of aspects of an image. So a keyframe is a place in the memory where it's holding information about settings. In-betweens are the frames which fill in the gradual changes between the keyframes to create the illusion of a smooth movement. And in computer programs that do animation, when you have in-betweens, it's because you have one keyframe and then further in time on the timeline, another keyframe. And the in-betweens are actually just locations on the timeline where the computer is trying to interpret the position where it would be by taking points on the timeline between those two keyframes and interpolating how different the position would be. A storyboard is a visual outline of an animation or movie using keyframes to describe the action, which contains notes about dialogue, camera moves, and editing. And this is also used by the computer programs. Often use the word storyboard to denote the window that has the timeline and the keyframes and layers. Film production terms and definitions. Scene punctuation, the type of transition between each scene. A cut is an instant change from one scene to another. A fade in and fade out. Fade in is the gradual appearance from black and then the scene beginning to get brighter and more visible until it replaces the black entirely and you have the scene beginning. A fade out, the scene is gradually darker and less distinct until it becomes black. Fades separate major sequences of action, suggest a lapse of time or a change of location. The length of the time determines the dramatic effect. A dissolve is a fade in superimposed over a fade out, so you never see the black or whatever color you use. You can use other colors than black for fade ins and fade outs, but instead of having another color or black replace or black being replaced by the scene, you have one scene that becomes less distinct while the other scene is becoming more distinct, and it never gets darker or lighter. It just stays about the same value, but the image changes. It's a mini fade and it's less dramatic. A wipe. The current scene is displaced by a following scene with a distinct edge between. This can be diagonal, vertical, horizontal. It can also be a circle or some other geometric shape. And you remember some of the cartoons from Warner Brothers have this circle wipe at the beginning or end. The picture is replaced by Porky the Pig sticking his head out saying, "That's all, folks." A key is an image composited over the current scene by dropping out or making transparent a specific color, which is chroma keying, or by dropping out a specific value, which is luminance keying. And now camera jargon and shots. And this is from Wendy Tuminello, Exploring Storyboarding. An extreme long shot will show the landscape and the surroundings where the action is taking place. So usually a very big landscape. The people are not significant, they're so small, but it gives you an idea of where something's happening. A long shot also shows the location, plus the subject. The people are visible and you can recognize who they are. And the action, you can see something happening. Establishing elements of a scene. So letting people know what's about to happen by seeing what's involved. A full shot will frame the entire height of a person with the head near the top of the frame and the feet near the bottom. That's why it's called full. It's the full-length person. Both subjects in the dialogue can be included in this shot, so they can be talking to each other. A medium shot frames an individual from the waist or the knees up. It's used most frequently for dialogue scenes between 2 or 3 individuals. A close-up shot shows a character from the shoulders to the top of the head. An extreme close-up, which is very, very close, is used to elevate tension, mystery, or emotion by filling the frame with an image, detail of a face, such as a mouth, or the detail of an object, such as a door knob. It's very close. Sometimes you'll see just like the eyes down to the mouth, and you can see the way that the character is reacting to whatever is happening. A single shot focuses on one person in the frame and is usually a medium shot or a close-up, and a 2-shot has 2 characters in the frame. So you could have a medium shot or a close-up shot with 2 people in the frame talking, and that would be a 2-shot, or you can have 1 person in the frame and that would be a single shot. Straight ahead animation is when you have an idea where you're going with something, but you're not sure where you're going to end. You just know what you have to accomplish with it. So, straight ahead additive, you draw and duplicate the frame and add to the image and duplicate that frame over and over until you have something that's basically growing. Subtractive is basically the opposite. You have the entire object and then you erase part of it and go into the next frame. Each time you go to the next frame, you erase a little more. Then if you use the subtractive method and then reverse it, you can make it look like it's growing and you'll have a little more control over the end product because you know what the image is going to end up with. Manual transform, you just change the image slightly for each frame by using skew or stretch or scale or rotating. So it's a simple way of making it look like something's moving. Now stretch, ease, anticipate, pose-to-pose, rotoscope. Stretch and squash. When you stretch an image in the direction of the motion to show the energy or flatten the object to show the loss of energy or impact. And this is usually used with things like bouncing balls or characters that are jumping and landing. Ease in, ease out shows acceleration by starting the motion slowly and ending quickly. Ease in, or begin quickly but end slowly to show the deceleration. Ease out. So ease in. Imagine you're driving a car, but you're starting from a stop sign. When you begin, you're not going very fast. By the time you get to the other side of the street, you're going a little quicker. By the time you're half a block down, you can be going 60. That would be an ease in. Then, as you're driving, you may see a light turn red a couple blocks ahead. You will begin to slow down. You may be going 60 2 blocks away or a block and a half away, but by the time you get to very much in halfway there, you're going much slower, and you may be going 20. By the time you get to that stoplight, you're stopped, so you've slowed down, you ease out. Anticipate. Just before an object starts to move, it will lean back as if gathering force. You see this in a lot of cartoons when the character will take his hands up and pull back and lean back, and then he'll start to lean forward as he starts to run. That's anticipation. Pose to pose basically is keyframing and in-betweening in classic animation. When the head animators would draw only the keyframe positions, and then people they called in-betweeners would draw all of the intermediate frames using onion skinning, where they would lay a piece on top of the previous frame, but they would have an idea of how many frames they were going to have to use because they had the beginning and the end frame and they knew how long that space was supposed to be. So they would say, this has to happen in 24 frames. It's going to take 1 second. They would cut it into 24 pieces of paper and they would do each in-between position. This was pose to pose. They would know where it would start and where it would end. They would figure out where it would be in the middle, and then they would start to go in between each of those positions as many frames as they needed to finish off that move, and that's pose to pose animation. Rotoscoping. And remember, we rotoscoped the Greyhound in Photoshop this semester. Rotoscoping is a method of tracing filmed or videotaped movements to create natural emotion in animation. It was invented by Max Fleischer in 1917. The Fleischers held the patent for both the machine, which Max invented, and for the technique of rotoscoping itself. We used rotoscoping to trace an image sequence and make the Greyhound run across the stage. Another animation concept is tweening. So, transforms of tweening in After Effects, you can use position. When you place an image on a layer on one frame in a particular location, you set the keyframing stopwatch, and then in the timeline, choose a different frame later in time and change the position. After Effects will tween the object in space. When you have 2 keyframes on the timeline and change the rotation setting for the object, this will tween the rotation in space. Other transforms that are available that we've worked with, the anchor point, you can tween the anchor point. Scale, you can tween the scale, make it get bigger and smaller. You can even make it not stay in proportion so it gets fatter or taller. You can tween opacity, and that also can make it either be invisible at the beginning and become more visible, or it can fade out. These can all be transformed across time. Text presets. Remember, there are text presets, and you can apply them to any text that you have on a layer. Text in After Effects may be entered directly using the text insertion tool. You may also create the new text layer using Layer New Text. Text created in Photoshop is a text layer and imported using import as composition or composition retaining layer sizes may be converted to editable text. Text preset motions are available under Animation Browse Presets. Available presets will be shown using the bridge. Text presets may be longer or shorter than the motion you would like, but you can move the keyframes in the timeline to organize them as you wish. Make them longer, make them shorter, whatever. The only problem is when the preset is actually a code, and in that case you would not be able to change the length of it, but you could change the length of your layer.